Ark Invest is coming up with a new ETF called ARKX. So for those who don't know what Ark Invest is, they are basically a fund manager company that specializes in choosing innovative company that can disrupt industries in the future. They have seen tremendous growth in the past year of 2020. Their main ETF, ARKX, has grown by more than 100% in the past year. So obviously, many investors believe that they are doing something right. So they are going to register this new ETF, which is actually in the space exploration industry, a fairly untapped industry. And this is going to be an interesting move to watch, because most of the space exploration companies we know of are not even profitable because there's no consumer demand. The technology hasn't really gone into the mainstream yet, and much of the funding would either come from government support or perhaps from other commercial projects to sustain these space exploration projects. But here's the catch. If space exploration becomes mainstream, it will be an entirely new industry of new consumer demand. And just a quick figure, it could be worth at least $20 billion, and this could easily disrupt airlines. So there's definitely a lot of money to be made if this pulls off. So ARKX has not announced what companies will go into this ETF, but investors obviously have already tried to predict it, because we see companies like Virgin Galactic and Maxar Technologies immediately jumping after this announcement. Me personally, myself, I will be looking out for two companies, and that would be SpaceX and Starlink, because these two companies are led by Elon Musk, and both of them have achieved a lot of new innovations that most other companies haven't been able to, or in fact they have been disrupting things that hasn't even materialized. For example, SpaceX, they were the first company to successfully launch, orbit, and even recover a spacecraft. They were the first company to do a controlled flyback and recovery of payload fairing, and they were the first company to autonomously dock a spacecraft to the International Space Station. Who would have guessed? I didn't even know we need this kind of innovations. Now I'm speaking from a layman perspective. I do not have any background in physics or engineering, but I think it'd be fun to explore a little deeper into these ventures. So essentially, SpaceX achievements, the ones that I just listed, they essentially lowered the cost of space travel. No other rocket companies that I knew has been able to recover a spacecraft, let alone autonomously docking a spacecraft to the International Space Station. In fact, they have the most potential to make space travel affordable to the masses. Just a brief idea, Back in the 1970s, it used to cost about $18,500 per kilogram to launch into space. SpaceX eventually reduced that number to just $2,720 per kilogram. That's an 85% drop in the cost. And we all know how disruptive and innovative Elon Musk's companies can be. So we can expect this number to drop even further within this decade. So I'm really hoping to see SpaceX in ARKX, and I think it's probably no coincidence that Ark Invest decided to call it ARKX. ARKX, SpaceX. It's no coincidence, because X doesn't even represent anything remotely close. I don't know, X zone. The closest representation is probably SpaceX. So I'm really looking forward to this. And hopefully they bring Starlink in as well. Starlink, if you're not aware, basically launched satellites to make internet access available to the entire country of US, and especially rural areas where landline internet cannot be accessed. So essentially they've disrupted the whole internet industry as well. If by any chance these two companies are not in, I'm probably not getting into this ETF. Hopefully these two companies take up at least 10% of that ETF. So let's take a little deeper look into this ETF. So they're basically focusing on companies that are leading, enabling, or benefiting from technologically enabled products and or services that occur beyond the surface of Earth. Kind of a generic statement there, but I would just basically imagine investing in technologies or companies that can do things that are not attached to Earth, to the Earth's land or Earth's waters. So there are 4 categories to this ETF, essentially: orbital aerospace, suborbital aerospace, enabling technologies, and aerospace beneficiary. And now before we proceed further, I think it would be good to have a visual understanding of orbital and suborbital, because as a layman I don't think I can really imagine what that is. So here's a video from R. Fairman on YouTube. He literally just animated this definition of suborbital versus orbital, and I think it's worth a look. So here we have the suborbital. Basically, the rocket goes up and it just goes back down. For orbital, as you can see, it flies off in a trajectory, and then you continue to circulate around the Earth, and you can just pretty much do it forever, or at least from a simple view. So inside ARKX, orbital aerospace companies, they were targeting companies that launch, make, service, or operate platforms in the orbital space. So from what we just saw, that includes like satellites and launch vehicles. And then we got the suborbital aerospace companies. They are the ones that launch, make, service, or operate platforms in the suborbital space. So to put into perspective, that will include things like drones, air taxis, and electric aviation vehicles. So if I were to think of air exploration tourism, this should be likely the category we would fall under. And it would, I guess it doesn't necessarily have to leave the Earth's stratosphere, as long as they can achieve their purpose. And this would be a huge disruption to the airline industry. And then we got the next category called the enabling technology companies. They are the ones that create the technologies required for successful value-add aerospace operations. So we're talking about things like artificial intelligence, robotics, 3D printing, materials, and energy storage. So from a consumer perspective, I mean, we would just perceive the rocket, us going into a rocket and just going out into the Earth's orbital. But there's actually a lot of factors running in the background to achieve that. Since many of the things that take place won't even happen on Earth, we would have to automate a lot of things and leave it to the machines, which is why we need artificial intelligence to be able to operate the things for us, and we definitely need some energy storage because we're not going to be able to tap into good old oil or petrol from Earth. And as space travel becomes more explored into, we will probably start discovering things, and 3D printing is probably going to help us create things that we may have never expected to create. And speaking of materials, I think there's a lot of minerals in the asteroids. So essentially we're going to have asteroid mining. That's probably going to disrupt the whole gold mining industry on Earth as well. Pretty crazy if you come to think of it. You notice there's a trend where industries continuously extract things from Earth, especially oil and gold, eventually gets disrupted. People are starting to see that we can't just squeeze the Earth dry if we want a sustainable future. So oil is going to get disrupted. We're moving on to electric vehicles, and if gold gets disrupted, then it may possibly suggest that gold's not even that valuable in the future, huh? So these are what technology enabling companies can do. They make all these things possible. And finally, the fourth category in ARKX is the aerospace beneficiary companies. So basically they just benefit from aerospace activities in this basically in the agriculture, internet access, and GPS, and construction and imaging. So let me just try to put the whole ETF in one visual perspective. So we got the ARKX ETF. They got the orbital aerospace companies. They got what you call the suborbital aerospace companies. Then got the enabling technology companies. And you got the aerospace beneficiary companies. Now I'm going to try to connect the dots here. Now just give me a sec, I'm just going to connect them offline. Alright, let me try this again. So we got the ARKX fund. They are going to be investing in orbital aerospace companies, so this is where I think SpaceX, possibly Starlink, will come in as well, because they launch vehicles and set up satellites around the Earth's orbital. And then we got the suborbital aerospace, where they provide things like drones and airbuses, and it would directly benefit consumers like us. But in order to translate the benefits, we need these technology enabling companies to bring the innovation benefits to the consumers. You know what, I think I'm going to add one more here. There we go. So in order to connect the benefits and to materialize it for the consumers, you're going to need companies like Tesla. Because now that I recall, they include energy materials and energy storage. That is something that Tesla is really good at. And of course, we're going to have companies like Nano Dimension, and I don't know, possibly Google Alphabet inside this category. So this will be quite an interesting play out for us. And then we got aerospace beneficiary companies, and I think Starlink kind of overlaps with this category as well, because we're talking about companies like internet access and GPS, and this will also directly benefit the consumers. So besides the orbital, in the orbital category, you can see that the other categories can actually directly benefit the consumers. But right now, the demand is just not there yet, because it's not quite developed, it's not quite accessible, it's not quite affordable yet. But we are getting there, and I think this ETF actually covers it all quite holistically actually. So the bigger question now is, would you want to be an investor in this whole system? Or would you want to be just a consumer, getting none of this pie? Or you can just be, well, both. For me, if it's accessible to us, if it's affordable to us, I'm definitely interested to go for both. I'm definitely going for ARKX if it has SpaceX and or Starlink, a sizable amount, and in fact I wouldn't even be surprised if Tesla was actually added into this ETF as well. Now let's bear in mind that the following has said: a space exploration company may not currently derive any revenue, and there is no assurance that such company will derive any revenue from innovative technologies in the future. Alright, I think it's more of a disclaimer, but yes, it's definitely a risk there. But we all know this is Ark Invest. They know how to choose the right companies. Well, at least I have confidence that they know how to pick the right companies that has the best chance of succeeding. I'm pretty sure many investors have also put their belief in these fund managers as well. That's their funds have done incredibly well. Arcade, the flagship fund, 170% increase in the past in 2020. and I'm really excited for ARKX, and hopefully it has the companies that I'm aiming for. So how about you guys? Is ARKX a no or a go? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Thank you.